You are listening to an RPA production where people gather.
This is Sam, and you're listening to Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast.
Welcome. I'm Aaron Hunter, purveyor of paranormal stories, the occult, and the unexplained. Welcome to RPA. I hope you enjoy your stay. Hey guys, Aaron here, and Britt is currently away, but it is episode 170, Monday, July 16th, 2018. How's everyone out there around the world doing? And man, I got to make this quick. We are right up against the time limit. We do an interview with Nora Truscello, and she's an international speaker on intuition, and both of her books are bestsellers on Amazon. And we also speak about psychic ability. And she has a message that she thinks will help our listeners who are affected by the paranormal and or psychic experiences. They may be, you guys out there might be paralyzed, just sitting back hiding because you might be thought of as crazy. So she goes in depth about intuition. She goes in depth about psychic ability. And man, I got to tell you, I love speaking with Nora. I had my own personal questions about psychic ability and also intuition, and what's the difference between the two, because the border between the two is kind of, it's kind of foggy right there. So we go into that and we talk about all kinds of stuff, her own experiences, how she got into this whole intuitive thing and psychic thing. It's really interesting on our journey. So without further ado, guys, I present to you Nora Truscello. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Nora Truscello here. How are you? Glad to have you.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Love to have you back. I know it's been quite a while since you first came on. We spoke about one of your books last time, but now we're here. You've grown quite a bit. You now have two books. They're bestsellers on Amazon. But you're also just paralyzed because, they don't want to be thought as being crazy, which I can understand that as well. First of all, Nora, some of the listeners may know who you are, but some may not. So let's get your background story, because I'm sure you just didn't all of a sudden become, a researcher on intuition, someone who's dabbling in psychic ability. How did that all happen? How was Nora when she grew up?
Oh, I love to share this story. Thanks for asking. Okay. Because I really believe a lot of people can relate to it at different ages. I mean, I was pretty young. So we all know we have families that are crazy. I mean, nobody grew up in a normal family. But I was 13 years old, and I really knew my family was crazy. I grew up in a Middle Eastern culture. I know Truscello is my last name, but I'm married to an Italian. And in the Middle Eastern culture, psychics are pretty common. And in my father's Middle East restaurant in Old City, Philadelphia, we had many belly dancers who would provide psychic readings to the staff and sometimes to the restaurant people who would come in, and like the guest who would come in. Mm-hmm. And my father would even read the Turkish coffee leaves, grinds, like, you drink the coffee and you turn it over. So I was a well-informed 13-year-old. And like you, where you really were into IT, I was into math and science.
Okay.
I just knew they were all crazy. After all, I couldn't see it, I couldn't feel it, I couldn't taste it, touch it. It's not real.
Right.
And then, make matters worse now, I have two family members who keep speaking about dreams and, let me interpret your dream from last night. And they would have these intuitive discussions of their insights. And, I mean, does this sound like a healthy environment for a young person?
Right,
No,
right.
it really doesn't. So from my 13-year-old perspective, I just knew they were crazy, and as long as they didn't get too close to me, I would be fine. Then it happened. Just like that, in an instant, no warning. It just happened. I was standing in my parents' kitchen. My mom was working behind the kitchen counter, trying to keep up with all 6 of us kids. You know, she was always back there cooking. I was looking at her from the other side of the counter, and suddenly I had this instantaneous flash of knowledge and information. It was so powerful, quick and clear. It was like all the chatter in my head was silenced, and boom, I had this information. It was what I now refer to as like a download. I call them downloads.
Okay.
I panicked. All I could hear myself screaming in my head was, "Oh no, I must be crazy too." I mean, the fear of being crazy was so intense. The voice in my head was so loud, screaming, "Oh no," that, believe it or not, till today, I cannot tell you what that first download was. I was so afraid I was crazy. The only memory I have of the whole situation was the fear it created. But really, I was more afraid of what people would think of me.
Right, right.
I mean, why? I mean, you had Sharon Clark on the other day, and she a few weeks ago saying the same thing. People are afraid that you're going to be laughed at and thought of as crazy, and that's how I felt back then. And I didn't want people to think of me that way. This is seriously disturbing when you're 13 years old because you got your whole life in front of you.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want the kids in the neighborhood to blackball you. So I was real quiet. I told no one. And it was getting weirder. I would sit in front of the television, and I'm quite a bit older than you. Back in the day, there used to be a slight pause between commercials. I would be able to say what the next commercial would be.
Interesting.
And I'd be right. And I'm keep telling myself, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I made myself believe, well, you know what? You like math. You're very good at logic. You just, you're good at recognizing patterns. I kept justifying it.
Right.
Then I started noticing in school I would know what student the teacher would call on. And I started to feel like I was feeling how other people were feeling. Now, I couldn't confirm that always because, you're not going to walk up to someone and say, "How are you feeling?" when you don't really talk to them. 13, you only have your own group of friends you talk to. God forbid you go outside of it. But I would go up to my friends. "How you doing?" That's how we speak in South Philly. "How you doing?" And I would always get confirmation, and I was right.
Interesting.
So it started to bother me more and more. I really started getting like, I need to be able to talk to somebody about this. So after a few months, I surrendered. And I was at my dad's restaurant, and I'm literally slowly walking up the spiral staircase where the belly dancers would sit at night waiting to do their performances. And I was heading up to my dad's office on the 2nd floor. I had to surrender to my destiny. I was crazy like these other people. He may as well know. Like, there's nothing I could do about this. He's crazy, so he'll understand, right? I opened the door to his office, and as I turned to my left where his desk was, he looks up and goes, "What's up, kiddo?" He always called us kiddo. And in this pathetic, low voice, I go, "Dad, I think I'm crazy. I know things, and I don't know how I know them. I just do." And he goes, "Well," and this was like, he was really friendly, which is curious, because if you knew my dad, he wasn't a friendly man. He goes, "Well, you see, honey, we are all radios." And he stretched out his hand as if touching an imaginary radio dial and began turning his wrist back and forth. "You just need to tune in. Some of us can tune in faster and better than others. Don't let it worry you. You're a natural radio. It's a gift when you don't have to work at it." And I thought, what a relief. I'm so grateful I'm not crazy. I realized we all have intuitive powers, or all crazy, or all both. So this is what led me to eventually start helping people. I mean, like the years now, we're going like, woo, fast forward
Right.
40 years. And I started helping people who suffer from extreme psychic and paranormal experiences. I volunteered for the ARE, the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and I worked with these extreme cases that the volunteers weren't trained to handle. And we were called the battered boundaries. And we would get those people who were dealing with spirits, being attacked by unseen forces, have unexplained blood on their wall. And every case I handled, the first thing every single person would say to me was, I think I'm crazy. I was always a relief to them when I would say, no, you're not. You know, guess what? This is real.
Right.
But over the years, I realized I have a mission, and it's two-part. First, to help people tune into their particular radio wave, you know? Help them discover their natural abilities, their natural radio station. And not only to discover this ability, but to assure them that they're not crazy. So that's how I got started. And the more I worked on things over the years, I mean, God, I got stories of hundreds.
But it seems like it didn't start for you until you turned 13, and that's right around puberty. Do you think there's a correlation between, you know, your family and their abilities passed on to you, and also right around that period is when most people experience, you know, puberty, right around there? Or do you think it could happen anytime? Could it happen when they're 30? Or do you think it could happen very, you know, much younger than 13, before puberty?
There was a time that I thought that puberty had a lot to do with it, because there were often teenagers or teenagers are emotional, hormonal, complete time bombs, and that kind of energy does open portals. So yes, in that respect, I started opening up portals, started opening up experiences, probably because of that. Plus, it didn't hurt that my family was accepting of this stuff, that it was part of the culture.
Yeah, you're lucky.
The more I learned, though, it's really worldwide culturally. Okay. Every culture believes they're the ones that can really do it.
That's right. That's right.
You get together with a bunch of Italian old ladies, and they all know it. They got it. They had the the widow's point, or whatever it is that they call it. And my partner and good friend, Christine Gerganis, she's German ancestry. And she learned from her grandmother. And I never thought the Germans would be intuitive. I mean, they're tough and strong. But, they're not mushy and emotional. But no, it's a big deal in their culture. So I can't say it's necessary. That's really kind of why I say everybody has it. Also, think about it. Can anybody... And please email me if you can say you're a person who never had this. And you've never got a hunch. You never had just a feeling. You never had to, like this, I kind of know. And that's what I'm talking about. It's just a matter of tuning into it and practicing it. Everybody can play the piano. If all things being equal, okay, with taking out any of the extremes, all people being equal, you can play the piano. Some of them will be so good they'll be concert pianists. Some will be like Mozart, and some of us can get the chopsticks out, but we can play the piano, right? Yeah. And then you have psychic abilities. Some of us are like Teresa Caputo. Christine, my partner, she's like Teresa, amazingly gifted and very quick. Others would be more like a concert pianist. That would be me. I'm very good, but I don't really practice the way those guys do, so I'm not a Teresa Caputo. But then you'll have the person who only gets the occasional hunch, the chopstick player. Yeah, I can relate to that. First of all, I'd like to just make a comment of what you said, where all cultures have some sort of story or a belief system
about certain individuals that what we call psychic or what we call intuitive. That's very interesting because on my show, I state that as far as demons are concerned, the very bad of the bad.
Yeah.
Every culture has some sort of demon that that does the same thing, and these cultures are thousands and thousands and thousands of miles apart. They developed on their own. I always mention this: the Middle East, they call it the jinn. Of course, Catholics, they call it demons, and they got them named. And of course, I always mention the Native American Indians. They're called shadow walkers, and all cultures have some sort of evil that they just have a different name for it. So now you're talking about psychic ability and intuitiveness, and that's true.
And
you hear it all over.
And it does come on messages that are filled with anger. And now the message won't be filled with anger. The emotion behind it is, and that is a demon, a shapeshifter. That is something trying to direct you away from the light, the good. And mind you, when those messages come, they're usually beautiful because they want to trick you. Can you imagine if a demon appeared or sent a message truly of what it felt? You'd run so fast to whatever your God is.
Sure.
It would totally defeat the purpose of the demon.
Right.
So that's why people find themselves with situations of incubus and succubus, where they find themselves being thrown around a room and there's nothing there, because they believed the messages they were getting. They were coming beautiful and sweet, but they weren't sensing the energy that was sending it to them. They open up to it and bam.
Now, when you say sensing the energy, you mean their intuitive ability for to discern if, even though this thing is saying nice things, but if they feel.
No, not intuitively. Now that's the cool part about this.
Okay.
So the intuitive footprint is I coined that phrase to explain what I'm talking about. Intuitively, you're receiving a message, but every message is carried by an emotion. And the emotion is what you feel on your body, very subtle like. It's a subtle energy. And you have to train yourself. You have to find how to feel when it's anger versus when it's joy. Now, for years, I would have... I would teach in large groups, and I would get half of the room to think of an angry memory, and the other half of the room, I would put them in a quiet state and have them feel the anger and then feel a joyful memory, and they would get it. But that's really a slow process for getting it out into the world. Like, I want everybody to understand that they need to know this. So we worked on how else can we discover this? How else can we get people to discover it without having to come to a lecture that I'm doing? And we practiced it with different students and found that there is a way to get into a very simple meditative state and call forth asking, how would these emotions feel on their bodies? And this was so important to me to get out. And even though it is like the one program I get paid the most to do, I decided to release it on a free class because it's just too important. So it's in a couple weeks, because I have no IT abilities and I stumble all over the place. I would love to have half of your knowledge. I'm serious. You have no idea. My hair is green in these videos. I have a disclaimer in the beginning. I am so IT illiterate. My hair is green, and I'm not redoing these. Okay? My hair is not really green, is what I'm saying. But I so want it out there that we made these videos, and we teach people how to distinguish for themselves, and we're making it free. So if you're interested, just go to my website, sign up for my email, and you'll get it. Because these paranormal groups move out there and they go into these environments, or these kids want to fool with Ouija boards and they have no clue who's coming through.
Right.
And the
Right.
only way to honestly know if it's safe is by the emotion, and you feel it on your body.
That's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm just to touch a little bit more on intuitiveness, which I want to get into that. I got my own personal questions, which I believe the audience probably would have the same questions. But there's been many a times where I'll be walking in a parking lot, and I'm going to a big box store to buy something, and I see a penny on the ground. Right? I'm sure everyone's been in this situation, or at least some of you out there that are listening. But I look at it and I look at it, and I don't hear voices or anything, but something just urges me, you should pick up that penny. And then I just pass by it and I think, nah, it's a penny. I don't need a penny. And now if it was a quarter, yeah, I'll pick it up. If it was a dime, yeah, I'll pick it up. This is a penny, but you get that urge, you should pick it up. Nah. And guess what? This happens to me quite often, and I'm not going to say it's intuitiveness or it's psychic ability. I just believe it's, a lot of people say they don't believe in coincidences, but, perhaps there's something to it. But, I go to checkout, and my purchase is equal to the total that I owe is $8.56. And guess what I got? $8.55. And if I would have picked up that penny, it's no big deal, but now I have to break a dollar. Right now, I got more change in my pocket, so I get this sort of thing all the time. Not every time, but there are multiple times. Yeah, there are multiple times where I get this urge. Yeah, you should pick it up, Aaron. And I just think to myself, it's a penny. And then lo and behold, I could have used that penny. It's just interesting. That's all I'm going to say about it. But
I love it. What a wonderful story. Because it's a lot of times we don't trust the intuition because we don't know where it's coming from.
Well,
so you don't know where that was coming from.
My logic.
You just think it's your logic.
Yeah, well,
you learned from Ben Franklin. Was it Franklin? A penny saved is a penny earned. Oh, bag it, I ain't getting it. That's what you think. Yeah. I know it's hard to distinguish sometimes.
Yeah, like I was about to say, my logic just overrode.
Yes.
That sort of nonsense, or I believe it's nonsense. I don't need the penny. And then something says, yeah, you should pick up the penny. Nah, I don't need the penny. So.
You want a great tip I tell my students?
All right.
You know how you can't stop the chatter in your head, right? Like, even though I'm talking to you, I can hear all the other thoughts going on. Like, if you pay attention, your mind never shuts up.
Right.
But when you get those, pick up the penny, and you won't hear anything else going on.
Yeah,
when there is nothing else going on, that's the way you know it's a definite intuitive hit.
Mm. Now, I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I'm kind of curious myself because the boundaries. The question I'm going to ask you, the boundaries between each of these things. It gets pretty foggy, at least in my opinion. So describe intuitiveness and also psychic ability. How do you discern between the two? What are some of the main characteristics that would define intuitiveness, and also characteristics that would define, okay, you're not intuitive, you're actually psychic, or vice versa? And this is what I mean. It gets pretty foggy between the boundaries.
It is, and I kind of try to explain it in my second book, The Science of Intuition, and I'm not really sure I did a very good job at it.
Okay.
So I like to think of intuition as our natural state. It's our natural way of just being able to pick up information that's freely there to assist us. Psychic is when you go into the spiritual realm and grab information, or the spiritual realm comes to you in a mediumship.
I think I know what you're talking about. You mean psychic ability is something that you actually have to turn on. You have to work at it.
I have to turn on my psychic ability.
Whereas intuitiveness...
My intuition is just natural.
Yeah, it just comes to you.
It's just part of who we are. Right?
Okay, interesting. Yeah, another... I like to people watch. And I'm pretty good. And what I'm getting at for the listeners out there is that... I use my experience of being here on this world for the years I've been alive, and I can sit on a bench and I can watch people, downtown Chicago, and I can tell when someone is up to no good, or I can tell, there's a person that's agitated or a person is excited. And it has nothing to do with psychic ability or intuitiveness. I just look at their body language, and I look at what they're doing. There's, one time there's this guy sitting in standing in the entryway of a retail place. And of course, you got crowds and crowds of people in Chicago and walking along the sidewalks. And I'm watching this guy, and he wasn't dressed very well. Okay, his hygiene wasn't exactly up to par. He had his phone in his hand, but he wasn't looking at his phone like most people. They're very, when you got your phone out, you're usually doing something, and you just block out the rest of the world. But this guy, when I was watching him, his eyes were really shifty. He was looking around. At first I thought maybe he's waiting for somebody. But then after a while I realized, no, he's looking for some sort of opportunity, and I think he's just waiting to pickpocket. He's a predator. And of course he's standing there, and right across the sidewalk, on the edge of the sidewalk, is a bench, and it was empty. And I was thinking to myself, why doesn't he just go and sit down? And I'm thinking, well, it's probably because it's easier for him just to, when he picks out a target, just to blend in right away. Just to take a few steps into the crowd and blend in, be easier for him. So I people watch a lot, and I get pretty good, and I could tell when someone doesn't belong in a certain situation or not. But that has nothing to do. I don't believe that has anything to do with intuitiveness or psychic ability.
Well, that's what a lot of people argue, is that it's not intuition, it's paying attention to the tiny details.
Right, yeah.
And that you just get accustomed to. My father and I used to have that discussion a couple times. We would sit there, it's like, Dad, do you think we're really talented, or do you think we just really can pay attention? We notice the details. We're aware of them. And we concluded it's both. It's a mixture, because you have all that insight, and then like that was noticing the shifting of the eyes, the not looking at the phone. So it was all triggering common sense, logical stuff.
Right.
But then the intuitive side was saying pickpocket. Why would you say pickpocket and not waiting to stab somebody? Whatever.
Yeah,
it's like there was something there. And I tell everybody who will listen, when intuition does not require you to stop being logical. Logic and intuition work hand in hand. One of my favorite mentors, she said exactly what you said. People watch, people watch, people watch. Just keep doing it, because it tells you so much. And then you just have to reach out to get that little bit more information. The person tells you everything there is about them, from their body language, their clothing, their, just like you were saying.
Sure.
And then you only have to tap in for a little bit. Don't ignore the obvious.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you also mentioned a little bit in the beginning of this of your show here about an organization. You use the acronym ARE,
Right.
and you belong to them, and you were helping people that with paranormal experiences, et cetera, things that they can't explain. Can you touch on what is that organization? What do they do?
Oh, the ARE stands for Association of Research and Enlightenment. And it's the Edgar Cayce Foundation. Now, the Battered Boundaries, the group I used to be a volunteer with, they no longer have us. Somebody in the Battered Boundaries group did a no-no.
Oh.
And the president of the organization at the time did not really know how much good we were doing, because we were a pretty small group, and shut it down, and rightfully so, because the person really did a big no-no.
Okay.
The purpose of the Edgar Cayce, they call him the American psychic, and he is the most documented psychic in the world. His library is in Virginia Beach, and he began doing his readings by accident. Long story short, though, they were mostly for healing, physical healings. So people from all over the world, literally, somebody wrote an article on him, and it went like wildfire. he would lay down on a couch, he would close his eyes, he would go into a meditative type state, just like almost falling asleep. Mm-hmm. His wife would say, I have Mr. Joe Smith's here. Please find him and give him a reading. And he would then say, within a few moments, I have the body of Joe Smith. No matter where the person was in the world, he would get to their body and analyze it, give them the exact illness they had, exactly what they needed to do to fix it. And he's also called the father of holistic medicine, mm-hmm. because everything was very holistic. Mm-hmm. Now, as time went on, some gentlemen said, wow, I wonder if he knows other stuff. And they started asking about the soul, about spirituality, about God, about dreams, you name it, somebody asked it. Then most of his readings are on health, but there are a tremendous amount of readings on psychic stuff, spiritual stuff, the psychology behind it. Like he really goes into things with exorcism, being very psychological. Mm-hmm. Not saying that there aren't really positions where a person is possessed, but focusing mostly on the psychological problems that the person's having.
Right.
It's just amazing. Fabulous person. You have to look him up if you don't know who Edgar Casey is.
Okay, very good. Now, you're all over the place. You're an international speaker, you're a lecturer, but you also have classes. How many classes do you have?
Well, I don't. We stopped. Well, let's put it this way. We stopped doing them because it wasn't being productive to do. With the last one was just a few months ago. We said we have to get online.
Okay, right.
So that's where we're going to be putting the classes now, all online.
Well,
And we are making the intuitive footprint a prerequisite. You cannot take my classes unless you take the intuitive footprint one, and we're making it free.
Okay, all right.
Because that's how important it is that I know you're okay. But we still do groups, like on September 22nd, we're going to be in Atlantic City, at the Atlantic City Aquarium. And we'll read the room because people love that. They love to bring their dead family members and see what they're saying.
And what's the convention called? Is it a convention you're going to, or?
No, it's not a convention.
It's just yourself.
We rented the spot.
Okay, so it's called, It's just your name, Nora.
Well, I don't even know if we gave it a name yet. This is how bad we are with IT and marketing. Look, we're good. We're good teachers. We're good guidance.
Okay.
But when it comes to marketing, and I'm sorry, guys, if you go to my website, I promise you it's all there.
Okay.
So it even has the wrong phone number. It even has the wrong phone number on it right now. I'm hoping to get it fixed.
Okay. So, you got a calendar on your website with all your events. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so for all you know, you might just call it Nora Truscello.
Most likely will be empowerment through intuition.
Okay. Right.
Because that is the show we do weekly on Facebook.
Okay.
Empowerment through intuition.
Very cool. Now, as I was doing some research on you, you did have a class. I don't know, like you said, it sounds like you're moving them to online now, but
yes,
there's one class that really stuck out to me. It's called Understanding the Intuitive Power of Your Dreams.
I love dreaming.
I'm interested in a little bit about that. What do you cover in that? Well,
there's several. A lot of people think they need a dream book to interpret their dreams, and I'm like, the worst thing you could do is go to a dream book. When you're having a dream, it's your higher self speaking to you. So is it going to it's going to speak to you in symbols. Our spirit, our soul speaks to us through symbols because it's a common language. It's what we both understand. But it's my symbol, not the author of the dream book symbol. So if I dreamt of an apple and I turned to a dream book, most dream books would probably say health and nutrition, and it's good for you. If I dream of an apple, I'm fearful of cancer because apple is a sign of cancer to me. And it's a long story, but that's my symbol for cancer. It represents cancer. So only my soul knows that. So it's going to tell me with symbols that I recognize. So I help people go through. It takes a while, man. This is intense, and we're going to try to do this class online, because you take your dream, you take every noun in your dream, you write it down, and then you take every verb in your dream and you write it down. And it's funny because it's like, is that a noun or a verb? Is that an adjective? You got to kind of remember your third, grade grammar. And then you put the symbol. What does that word represent to me?
Right.
And some people like, well, road, it's just a road. Okay, well, make something up. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Road. Moving forward, traveling, whatever, just put it down. And then we input in there on all the nouns, I am, because you are every part of the dream. Even though you dreamt of your mother, it's not necessarily your mother, it's that part of me that my mother represents. So my mother, when I dream of her, represents love, unconditional love. So that part of me that has unconditional love is eating an apple. Means that part of me that has unconditional love is not as strong as it used to be. It's getting sick. So maybe I need to look at, am I still being unconditionally loving, or am I being bitter towards somebody?
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's everyone has a different meaning for whatever is in their dream, whereas a dream book tries to make everything generalized. So,
but they're actually putting what it really means.